Dr. Jonathan Hayes, a millionaire heart surgeon, had walked the sterile hospital halls 1,000 times. But tonight, something stopped him cold. In the dim light of the nurse's station, he saw a young nurse, Sarah, slumped over the desk, fast asleep. Her arms were crossed, and her pen still rested in her hand, as though she had tried to finish one more chart before exhaustion claimed her. He stood there silently for a moment. Most would have simply woken her or even scolded her. After all, sleep on duty was against hospital rules. But Jonathan saw more than just a nurse. He saw someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone fighting fatigue while giving her all for strangers' lives. As he looked closer, he noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the faint marks on her wrist from constantly changing gloves, and the empty coffee cup nearby. She wasn't careless, she was drained. Instead of anger, his heart softened. Leaning closer, he whispered gently, "Thank you, for giving so much of yourself." Then, quietly, he took off his own expensive coat and draped it over her shoulders. Before leaving, he placed a note by her hand, "Rest when you can. This hospital survives because of people like you." The next morning, Sarah woke up startled, only to find the coat and the note. Tears filled her eyes. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel invisible. Sometimes, the smallest words carry the greatest weight. The next day, Sarah walked into her shift carrying the note and the coat folded carefully in her arms. She felt embarrassed at first. What if people had seen her asleep? But then she remembered the handwriting, strong, precise, yet gentle. It wasn't just anyone. It was Dr. Jonathan Hayes, the man everyone in the hospital admired but also feared a little. Sarah had always known him as the untouchable millionaire surgeon, distant, brilliant, and too busy for small talk. Never in her wildest dreams had she imagined he'd stop long enough to notice her. Yet he had. During rounds, she nervously approached him. "Dr. Hayes, thank you for last night." She held out his coat, unsure if he'd even remember. Jonathan paused, surprised. Then he smiled, a rare, genuine smile that softened his otherwise stern face. "Keep it," he said quietly. "Looks better on you than it ever did on me." The word struck her like lightning. For the first time, Sarah realized that beneath the title of a millionaire doctor was a man who hadn't forgotten the value of kindness. Later that evening, Jonathan gathered the staff in the break room. He spoke openly, something he rarely did. "I've seen too many of you running yourselves into the ground. Patients need you, but they also need you healthy, alive, and human. From today, I want every nurse and resident to have protected rest hours. No arguments." Gasps filled the room. Sarah covered her mouth, overwhelmed. He wasn't just thanking her, he was changing the way they worked. And in that moment, every exhausted heart in the hospital felt just a little lighter. Sarah couldn't stop thinking about Dr. Hayes' announcement. Nurses who had quietly suffered now had a voice through him, and it felt almost surreal. She noticed how the staff walked a little taller that day, as though the heavy burden on their shoulders had been lifted. Later that night, while Sarah was checking IVs in the children's ward, Jonathan appeared beside her. He stood silently for a while, watching her adjust a little boy's blanket. The child, bald from chemotherapy, reached up weakly and gripped Sarah's hand. She smiled, whispering something soft that made him laugh. "You have a gift," Jonathan said quietly when they stepped out of the room. Sarah blushed. "I'm just doing my job." "No," Jonathan replied firmly. "You're giving these kids something medicine alone can't give: comfort, hope. I've spent years chasing success, surgeries, and titles. But watching you, I realize I've overlooked what really heals people." His words startled her. Was this the same doctor who once skipped staff birthdays and never joined holiday gatherings? There was something different in his voice, a vulnerability she hadn't heard before. That weekend, Jonathan surprised everyone again. He donated part of his fortune to create a rest and renewal lounge for the hospital staff, comfortable chairs, soft lighting, and even beds for short breaks. He insisted it be called the Nurse's Haven. When Sarah walked in for the first time, tears blurred her vision. On the wall hung a plaque that read, "For every unseen hero who gives without asking, this space is yours." And beneath it, Jonathan had signed his name. Sarah realized then that one small act of kindness, falling asleep at her desk, had sparked a change bigger than she could have imagined. News of the Nurse's Haven spread quickly through the hospital. For once, the break room wasn't filled with complaints or exhaustion, it was filled with laughter. Nurses sat together, sharing snacks, resting, even just breathing without the constant rush of alarms. Sarah watched from the corner, her heart swelling with gratitude. She never thought her own exhaustion would lead to something so meaningful. But deep down, she wondered, why had Dr. Hayes changed so suddenly? That evening, as Sarah finished her shift, she found Jonathan in his office staring at an old photograph. It showed a young woman in scrubs, smiling brightly, her arm looped around a man who looked much younger but unmistakably like Jonathan. "She was my sister," he said softly, noticing Sarah at the door. "A nurse. She worked herself sick. I was too busy building my career to notice what it was doing to her. By the time I did, it was too late." His voice broke. "I promised myself I wouldn't let history repeat itself." Sarah felt her throat tighten. Suddenly, everything made sense, the coat, the note, the haven. This wasn't just kindness. It was redemption. Placing a hand gently on his desk, she whispered, "You kept your promise. Because of you, no one here will feel invisible again." For a moment, Jonathan didn't speak. Then he looked at her with tears glistening in his eyes. "Thank you, Sarah. For reminding me what really matters." In that instant, their connection deepened, not as millionaire and nurse, but as two people bound by loss, healing, and hope. The hospital didn't just have a new lounge. It had a new heartbeat. Weeks passed, and the atmosphere in the hospital felt transformed. Patients noticed it too, the nurses smiled more, the staff carried themselves with renewed energy, and the halls no longer felt weighed down by fatigue. The Nurse's Haven became a symbol of care not just for patients, but for those who gave their lives to serving them. One morning, Sarah walked in to find balloons and flowers filling the lounge. On the wall, a banner read, "Thank you, nurses." Jonathan stood at the front, addressing the gathered staff. "I built my career on saving lives," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "But I realize now, the real heroes are standing in this room. You stay through the longest nights, hold hands when families can't, and sacrifice without recognition. You are the soul of this hospital." The room erupted in applause, some nurses wiping away tears. Sarah felt her chest tighten, this was more than she could have dreamed of. Then Jonathan looked directly at her. "And sometimes, one person's quiet strength can change everything. Sarah reminded me that even the strongest need rest, and even the busiest deserve compassion." Sarah's eyes brimmed with tears. She never set out to inspire anyone, she had just been trying to survive her shift. Yet here she was, proof that even the smallest moments can ripple outward into something far greater. As the celebration continued, Sarah slipped away to the children's ward. The little boy she cared for earlier waved at her weakly. She smiled, tucking the blanket under his chin. And she realized, kindness, whether whispered in a note, given in a smile, or built into a sanctuary, always leaves a legacy. The millionaire doctor hadn't just changed the hospital, he had changed hearts forever.